Hello, my name's Chris62, and this is...
Bdrew1111, gamertag Bdrew93, the Welsh gamer.
And this is the Welsh Crisp podcast, episode 8, all about the holiday 2015 jam. This is a big, absolutely jam-packed podcast full of a range of hot gaming topics from the oven, and we are so excited to come back with this podcast bigger, better, and bonkers than ever. Right. And so to start us off, we are going to do our first topic, and that is, what is next-gen? What would you say is next-gen? Now,
well,
yeah.
Go. Sorry, you go first.
I would say, to me, a next-gen system pushes the boundaries. What Xbox 360 couldn't do. What is close to what we see in PC without loading screens, with pushing the boundaries of graphical fidelity, the ability to do a range of different things, more content, and that is what a next-gen game is to me. And some impressive next-gen games that I have seen are Assassin's Creed Unity, Rise Son of Rome, Forza 5, the upcoming Witcher 3, and these games, I would say, are next-gen titles. So I want to know what defines a game to be next-gen rather than be put on a next-gen system.
No, fair comments, Chris. I'm still just trying to recover from the fact that you opened up the episode, because usually it's me that opens up the episode. Yeah, so I'm just trying to recover, because I didn't even get to say our teleprompter over there. Right, okay, I'm on the level now. No, great question and great points as well, and I couldn't agree more with you. A next-gen title, simply from the foundations to making a good next generation title, you hit the nail on the head. It needs to be at a level of quality that the 360 and PlayStation 3 could not do. That is the minimum standard. It has to be above that. Like when you take Battlefield Hardline, for example. Yes, a very fun game. I'm sure I know you like it, and my box of X likes it, and a lot of people like it, and I'm sure the gameplay's fun. But it looks like it could easily be a 360 game or a PS3 game, which is exactly the point we're trying to make here. That a new gen title needs to push the boundaries that the last gen can't get to, and that is the minimum requirement for me as a next gen title. But as for the bigger picture, in my eyes, a next-gen title, like you said, Rise Son of Rome, Assassin's Creed Unity, and a game that I've recently purchased, The Witcher 3. With next-gen, I just expect so much size, so much scope, longer games, more value for money. Even take a game like Gears of War, for example. Say, for example, Gears of War 1, we have about 10 missions on the 360 per game, hypothetically. I know it's more than that. Say any average game, you get about 10 missions, because that's all the disc could hold, that's all the console's hardware is capable of. I expect on the Xbox One, triple that. I want to buy a game and think, bloody hell, I have got my money's worth. And Witcher 3 is a perfect example. I've paid £40 and I'm getting over 200 hours of gameplay. That speaks for itself.
Yeah.
That's before the visual.
Absolutely.
That's next gen for me.
Yeah, next gen is what I see is totally value for money and just so much content. To put, like I said, to push the boundaries of what 360 couldn't do, and which is being shown with Rise Son of Rome and Forza and Assassin's Creed Unity with the AI. With the most amount of people, I've mentioned this before, but the most amount of people I've ever seen in a game was Assassin's Creed Unity, and that to me was what next gen it is about pushing those boundaries and the limits, and to make games more interactive and more immersive, and just give us loads of content. And that is what a next-gen game is. Sometimes when people say, "Oh, I can't wait when that comes on next-gen," and they say, well, what does that really mean? Are you meaning you cannot wait until that comes to the Xbox One or PC or PlayStation 4? Or do you mean it's going to look amazing and it's going to be great? You know, I think Battlefront, that was on next generation consoles and neglected the last generation consoles, and they say like, oh, you know, that is a next generation game, and you know what makes it a next generation game? And I asked that question, and then they say about the graphics, and there's been a debate on the amount of the content and the low amount of content they announced for Battlefront, and a lot of people were saying, like, how is this a next gen game where you've got so less content? And you know, I think you have to have the right balance. You have to have it to look great, but you're going to have a lot of content as well. And together, that makes a next generation game.
Oh, totally, mate. You've got to have the balance. You have to have proportions. Like, take the Order 1886, for example, on the PlayStation 4. That went for strictly graphical fidelity to be the game dubbed the best graphics game of the new generation, which, fair enough, it probably succeeded on that front. But where was the content? It had, you know, you hear of people who completed it in less than 5 hours. So you've basically paid. I know the price has dropped dramatically since its release date, but at launch you could, on the release day, you could buy the Order in 1886 for, like, I imagine around the £40–50 mark, like your average game nowadays, and you only got a minimum, like, you know, maybe 5 hours out of it. Whereas, like, the Witcher 3, I've paid the same amount of money and I'm getting over 200 hours, and it's just like that's the difference between a well-polished, well-delivered new generation title and a game that, yes, okay, it could potentially have made the new generation mark, and at the end of the day, probably pushed the boundaries that it couldn't have done on the previous generation, like, graphically. But there's no replayability. It may look good, but that doesn't make it a good game. Which brings us to the argument: graphics isn't everything. New gen doesn't. Graphics shout new generation. It's the replayability, the size, the scope, and more for your money.
Yeah. Well, talking about more for your money. Two games that really gave me more for my money was the Halo Master Chief Collection, all 4 games, the multiplayer, and I tell you what, I would have paid an extra £30. I know many people would be complaining about it didn't launch in a perfect state, but if it did, I would be paying £20 extra, maybe £80 for the Halo Master Chief Collection. That's how I felt that I got my money's worth. And games like that, you know, that was an amazing purchase for me, to include all that content, all the campaigns and the multiplayer and the Forge and the Halo 5 and the Halo Nightfall, just for what, £40? And that, I can't tell you if that is a value for money. And Bowen just got the Witcher 3 and 200 hours, and the CD Projekt Red said they weren't going to do paid DLC. So that to get more DLC for absolutely free. And there was an interview done by GameSpot about CD Projekt Red, and saying about they feel the company, the developers, say that they do not want to rip people off. They want customers to buy like £40 and get that £40 back. They want customers to feel like they've purchased something and they're going to get everything, and not like Battlefield Hardline where you feel like you've purchased like half of something and you need DLC to get that half back. Now, I think The Witcher 3 is an absolutely perfect thing for value of money, and that's what I look for. That if I'm purchasing a game, I look for value for money. And sometimes I purchase the choice on why I make games purely on the basis of value for money. And I don't know if you do the same.
Oh no, mate, spot on. I mean, like, even like you said, you touched on Halo. Even regardless of the multiplayer, because obviously we all know it went down the crapper in terms of multiplayer. It's more than functional now, but regardless, we'll pretend the multiplayer isn't even in the equation. You're getting 4 full game campaigns, which you would have had to have paid 40 quid individually at some point in your life. And you're getting all 4 games, so technically £160 worth of games for £40. And the campaigns are phenomenal, a lot of replayability, and then bringing the multiplayer back into the equation, you've got all 4 multiplayers as well. And as a big Halo fan, so much replayability. That, even though it wasn't the best polished game, this only shouts new gen in the sense like more for your money, and it does tick most of the boxes. But then you were saying you touched on DLC. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because something else that strikes me when it comes to new gen, I feel these games that bring out day one DLC, I kind of feel like they're cheating us out of like the real new gen experience. It's almost as if, like hypothetically, say this, like these 3 Gears of War games, on one disc. It's almost as if they could give us all 3, but instead, purposely, just to make more money, they'll take away the 3rd game and just say, right, here's 2, but you have to buy the 3rd one on day 1 release. I know that sounds stupid, but it's almost like they're almost there. Like Evolve had day 1 DLC, didn't it? It's almost like the game, the full package is there, like new gen, here you go. But they've shot themselves in the foot, because they've taken away a 3rd of it to make you pay to have that 3rd, to turn it into a new game. It's like, that's just cheeky as hell.
Grand Theft Auto 5 is a perfect example. The scale and the scope, and the fact that heist was absolutely free, and you get all the DLC basically free. You could choose to purchase stuff, but everything is completely viable in game. You don't really need to purchase anything unless you really want it, and that's what I really like. The games that give it all to you, and so much content. And if you want to buy DLC, that's fine, but you're not forced to buy it. You know what I mean? And it really does annoy me with the DLC. And if, like I said, with Call of Duty, in DLC, they do a full-fledged, they do a really great campaign, and they have the multiplayer, and you don't feel like you're losing content when you buy a Call of Duty, but they have like DLC every 3 to 2 months, and that fulfills you. You get the DLC, and then you use it, and then you're ready for the next one. But you don't want to get slammed like with DLC after DLC every single day. It's just, you need to get the right balance between DLC and the content you give. And The Witcher 3 CD Projekt Red have certainly realised this, and I think a few developers should actually understand that we gamers want to feel like we've purchased. We're buying your games. We want to feel that we've purchased the right game, and we want a game that's going to last us, whether it be through replayability or through your DLC. But we don't want DLC all in one go, because no one's going to, I don't know anyone that, say if you brought The Witcher 3 and that has 200 plus hours, you're not going to get the expansion pack like day 2. I don't think anyone's going to really do that.
No, definitely. I think certain games kind of lose their edge as new generation titles when it's like, when you've paid your £40 for that game, and then you're expected to pay more to experience the full game. And it's like, that is such a cheek. How is that new generation when you're basically buying half a game, and the only way to experience the scope and the size, the full generation experience, is by buying extra. Whereas, like you said, The Witcher 3, 40 quid, over 200 hours gameplay, and if half a year up the line they release a DLC pack which adds another 100 hours, then fair enough. But at least you've already bought initially a new generation massive game. And I, for one, personally, as someone who has recently purchased and preloaded my Witcher 3 game, knowing that I have 200 hours of gameplay to come home from work to on May 19th, is quite an amazing feeling. So buzzing, can't fault it.
Yeah. Right, and it's just about like the purchase of games, and I did a video about this survey, and the Nelson survey, and we both did our videos on it, which was about why people buy the consoles, and it showed some surprising results, and it was about people brought people brought PlayStation because of the graphics and the resolution, and then people brought the Xbox One because of the games, and that was quite intriguing and some surprising results. And you would have thought that people buy a console because of the games and not because of the resolution, and you get into that entire argument. But they also did another survey, which was the reasons people buy games, and this is very important. I touched on this, and that was about story. Story is the most important reason out of, I think it was about 5,000 people in the United States participated in the survey. So the highest amount of percentage was the story. And I'll tell you what, and the lowest was the graphics and resolution. Now, if you think about this, people are buying consoles for the resolution, for the graphics, yet it's the lowest reason of why people buy games. And the story being the highest. And I know that I buy games on the story. And out of those 5,000 people who chose story as their main reason why buying games. So I ask you, Bowen, why do you buy games? And I ask you, the people watching, what are the reasons what influences you to buy games?
I kind of have two things for that and to answer you. It kind of just depends on the situation. Like, if it's a franchise that I'm familiar with, like Halo, Gears of War, Fable, I will buy the game for the story. Straight away, I couldn't care if it was stickmen walking around. If it's another installment in the Gears of War or Halo franchise, I couldn't give a crap what it looks like. I want to find out what's happening next in the story. So that would be my reason for buying one of those games. But then on the flip side, a brand new IP that we know nothing of, say Quantum Break as an example, call me a hypocrite, but your initial thoughts would be, God, that looks amazing. That looks fantastic. And then it's like if you walk into a bar and there's like a woman at the bar who looks really nice. You're not going to assume she has a wicked personality, are you? You're looking at her because she looks pretty. I know that's a stupid example, but it's the same principle with a new IP. Initially, you're going to look at it and think, wow, the graphics look fantastic. I bet that's going to be awesome. I'm definitely getting that. And you presume it's going to be amazing based on the graphics. And obviously, a lot of people make the mistake of going on that impulse, and they could be bitterly disappointed with the game, like the Order 1886. But in answer to your question, it really does depend on the situation. Franchise that I'm familiar with, Halo, Gears example, story, 110%. But if it's a brand new IP, it's fair to say that graphics is the first thing that catches my eye.
Well, one of the highest, we've got story being the highest, but the second highest was the price. And we just touched on that earlier about price being one of the biggest factors, especially out of those 5,000 of buying a game. So you've got story and price being the biggest factors. And this brings on to the next topic, which I'll allow Bowen to speak on this one because he's got a few things to say. And that is, of course, digital versus physical. Now, it's all about that price. and Bowen has recently purchased a game digitally, and we both have different opinions and thoughts. So I'll take it over to Bowen.
Cheers, Chris. Well, before me and you delve into into our usual debate / discussion of digital versus physical, I promised a few people, because I've done a video recently called Digital versus Physical regarding my purchase of The Witcher 3, and I just wanted to discuss the convenience of it all and all that capes. And a few people made comments in the comment section, and they raised some excellent points that I felt it was more than necessary to bring them up in our podcast, and it could it could help fuel the fire that is our conversation we'll have afterwards. So I'm going to read through it, the name of the person that made the comment, their points that they made, and then we can go from there. But I have Kozel UK, who said on my video, you don't get stickers and collector's edition stuff with digital, as he's a collector. He likes to collect stuff, which was a great point. Because honestly, no, it is a good point though. To be fair,
we're going to discuss that. We are going to discuss that because I've got a good argument.
Okay, cool. I'll continue reading and we'll argue after. Right. He also said you can't buy copies second hand, and places like Kex and Game could go under. And he said with there's so many job redundancies as there already that if digital did take off, he's basically saying that it could a lot of people could lose their jobs, because think about it, these big businesses that thrive on retail and buying and selling,
like a Blockbuster.
Yeah, exactly.
That's movie.
Yeah, no, totally. But they thrive on it. That is, if movies, games, and everything else, and music all went digital overnight, like nobody bought physical, all these shops would be no more.
Like HMV are closing down. That's no.
Yeah. No, totally. Sorry, but keep that in mind. And next person, it's obviously gaming. That's the name. He said, I will always go physical. I love having the case on my shelf. Fair comment. I've always 360. I used to love having cases and stuff. Next we have Delpoy. He said digital is the way forward, and then goes on to say Connect makes it even more convenient as you can change game with voice commands, no fuss. You don't even have to change discs, which is a great point as well. Next we have Dong Mayer. He said, I've never put a disc in my Xbox One, and I've had the Xbox One since day one. He said, I don't have to queue at midnight anymore for games. I can just download and play at launch, no fuss. And then he said, which I found quite funny, stop making noise, people won't be able to hear me, you bloody tipper-tapper. He said, I'll be home playing my game while people are queuing for hours. So another great point. And then we have Bryce360, where he said, I have 60 plus games, all digital. We have Phil Wilkinson, who says, I have a lot of games digital, but considering going back to physical, because once you have bought a digital game, you can't sell it and you're stuck with it. Even if you hate it and you have lost money, you can't get it back. And he said, for an example, he loved the look of Final Fantasy, that he loved the trailers, the gameplay footage, and he bought it digitally and he hates it. And he can't, he's stuck with it. So he's basically flushed money down the toilet. He said, if I could play a demo, he thinks that every game should have a demo. Because if he could play a demo, then he would never go physical ever again, as a demo would reassure him that he is making the good, the right choice and making a good purchase. And then he said there should be something in place, like a partial refund in case you dislike a game digitally. And lastly, we have Mr. T-Tech Gaming, where he says, I have one physical game and the rest digital. I love the convenience. Chris? Chris? Chris, hello.